When I was 10 and my younger sister Teresa was 6, our mother sent us to spend the summer with our father in the countryside. She said it would be good for us, the air, the silence, the trees. But I think deep down she just needed space. Or maybe she wanted him to remember that he had children. We didn't argue. Children don't usually question such decisions. They just go where they're told. But I remember the feeling in my chest, like something heavy and quiet had settled there. Something that didn't quite feel like fear, but wasn't far from it. Our father lived in a village that didn't even have a bus stop. The train took us far out of the city, through landscapes that turned more wild and empty with every hour. Fields stretched like blankets in the wind, crooked barns leaning into the horizon, and rivers that sparkled like secrets. After the last station, we were picked up in an old Lada Niva by a silent man with tired eyes and broad shoulders. We recognized him by his stillness, the kind that settles into a person like dust over the years. He didn't say much. He just drove. The village was called Sinichi. It was a scattering of wooden houses surrounded by dense forests and the kind of silence that has weight. Our father's house stood at the edge, right where the trees began. Not a boundary, more like a door. The roof sagged slightly in the middle, and the paint had long since peeled away. Behind it, there was a half-collapsed barn, a well with a creaking handle, and a meadow that sloped toward the woods. The days passed slowly at first. Our father didn't talk much. He rose before dawn, disappeared into the trees with an axe or hoe, and came back when the light turned gold. Teresa played quietly with a broken doll she'd named Kira. I wandered through the tall grass and watched the swallows dive through the dusk. We didn't have internet. The books smelled like damp wood. The radio barely worked. But there was something else, a feeling I couldn't explain. Like the land itself was watching us. Like the trees leaned in when we passed. Teresa didn't seem bothered. She was always good at being alone, good at dreaming things into being. One day, she told me there was a girl in the woods, a girl in a crown of thistles who could swim underground. I didn't believe her. Not yet. Teresa had always had a vivid imagination. She could turn a cluster of rocks into a castle, a puddle into a sea. The girl in the woods was just another one of her inventions, I thought. A story she told herself to make the silence more interesting, until she disappeared. It happened on a hot day, the kind where the air feels thick and still. I remember the bees droning lazily over the clover, and the clouds moving so slowly it looked like the sky had forgotten how to turn. I'd gone down to the stream behind the house to fish, and when I came back, Teresa was gone. At first I thought she was hiding. She loved to play tricks, crouching behind the firewood pile or under the porch, waiting to jump out with a grin. But this time she didn't appear. I searched the yard, the barn, the edge of the forest. I called her name until my throat ached. No answer. Our father said little when I told him. His face tightened, his mouth became a thin line, and he simply nodded once before walking out of the house. He returned an hour later with a lantern and a rope and headed into the woods without a word. I stayed on the porch that night, listening to the distant crack of branches, the occasional bark of a fox. He didn't come back until dawn. Teresa was still gone. On the third morning, I woke to the sound of humming. It was faint, like something drifting across water. I stepped outside, barefoot, into the wet grass. The sun hadn't yet risen, and the mist clung low to the ground. At the edge of the meadow where the forest began, I saw her. Not Teresa, the girl from her story. She was wearing white, her long hair braided and tangled with dry grass and thistle blossoms. Her skin looked pale, almost blue in the dawn light, and she was standing beside Teresa, holding her hand. My sister's face was calm, sleepy, like she was dreaming with her eyes open. I tried to run, to call out, but my legs felt as if they were trapped in honey. The girl smiled at me, not cruelly but not kindly either, just a soft, knowing smile, like she understood something I didn't. Then she and Teresa stepped back into the trees and vanished. I dropped to my knees in the grass, not out of fear, though I was afraid, but because I suddenly realized that what Teresa had seen, what she'd told me, wasn't a story. She hadn't been imagining. She'd been remembering. She returned that evening, alone. She came walking down the path from the woods, soaked to the skin as if she'd been swimming, though the weather had been dry for weeks. Her eyes were distant, unfocused. She didn't remember where she'd been. Not exactly. Only that the girl had shown her something beautiful, something underneath. That night, our father didn't ask questions. He made her warm milk and sat beside her until she fell asleep. Then he sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, his hands wrapped around a chipped mug, staring at nothing. The days that followed passed differently. The air around the house seemed quieter, the forest less menacing, but more alive. Our father softened, not much, but enough. He started telling us stories at night, not fairy tales, but strange old things about the land, about wells that whispered and stones that moved when no one was looking, about how some places remember more than people do, and about how there are names that shouldn't be spoken twice. We never saw the girl again, not clearly, but sometimes, when Teresa stood by the window at night, I saw something move behind her reflection, a flicker of white, a braid swinging like a pendulum. And once, just once, I heard the soft hum of that song again. When summer ended, and our mother came to bring us home, we packed our things without a word. We didn't tell her anything. She wouldn't have believed us, but I did. I still do. And sometimes, when I lie awake in my city apartment, listening to the hum of traffic and the distant bark of dogs, I hear another sound, quiet, woven into the walls of memory, the rustle of grass, the breath of a sleeping forest, and the low, gentle humming of a girl who swims beneath the earth. Years passed. Teresa and I grew up, left the city for different places, different lives. I moved to a gray apartment in a city that never quite knew what season it was. The windows looked out on parking lots and blinking lights. My days filled with meetings, phone calls, forms, and quiet meals in silence. I told myself I had moved on, that what happened that summer was just a strange memory, a heat-drenched illusion wrapped in childhood. But some memories are not meant to fade. They wait, patiently. Teresa was the one who changed most. As a teenager, she became distant, not cold, but unreachable, as though part of her had never returned from that forest. She was still kind, still laughed at my terrible jokes, still made paper birds out of napkins at family dinners. But there was always something in her eyes, like she was listening to a different music, one the rest of us couldn't hear. She became an artist. Her paintings were beautiful and unsettling. Forests full of crooked trees, pools of water reflecting skies that didn't exist, girls with tangled hair and hollow eyes, standing at the edge of something unseen. Critics called her work deeply evocative, haunted by rural myth. But I knew better. I knew what she was painting. She never spoke of that summer. Neither did I. And then, years later, I got a call. Teresa had vanished. Not disappeared in the way adults sometimes do. No overdue rent, no runaway suitcase, no missed therapy appointment. Her door was unlocked. Her keys were in the bowl by the window. Her unfinished tea had gone cold on the table. A half-painted canvas stood on the easel. On it, a thistle crown, a pale girl standing by the edge of a lake that bled into the sky. The police asked questions. They searched her apartment, tracked her bank activity, spoke to friends. Nothing. It was as though she had stepped out of her life the same way she had once stepped into that forest. Without warning, without sound, I knew where I had to go. It had been over 20 years since I'd seen Sinichi. The roads had changed, and the fields were smaller, fenced in by rusting wire. The village was even quieter now. No children, only a few old houses, their windows like blank eyes. My father's home was empty. The roof had collapsed in the back. Vines climbed the porch rail. The well was still there, though the handle had broken. I stepped into the silence like someone stepping into a memory. I walked to the edge of the forest. The air smelled the same. Pine, moss, earth. There were no paths anymore, just the thick undergrowth of time and neglect. But my feet knew where to go. The way you remember the steps of a childhood dance. I found the meadow. It was smaller than I remembered, overgrown, but the trees still leaned the same way, as if listening. And in the tall grass, there was a circle. Not burned, not dug, just empty. Perfect ring where nothing grew. I stood there listening. No birds, no wind, just the hush of a place holding its breath. Then I heard it, faint, almost buried, the hum, low and soft, familiar. I stepped forward, and something stepped forward in me. Not fear, not grief, just a kind of acceptance, like waking from a long dream and realizing it was real all along. I don't remember the moment I crossed over, whether it was a step, a breath, a blink. I just remember the feeling, as though the world around me shifted, gently but completely. The light changed, the colors deepened, the air grew thicker, and there she was, not the girl from the painting, not the child with thistles in her hair. Teresa, standing in the circle, smiling at me, not older, not younger, just unchanged, as if time had not touched her, or perhaps as if time had let her go. I reached out. She did too. And then the forest closed around us. Some say the land remembers. Some say children see more than they forget. But I say this, there are places in the world where stories are real, where silence has a shape, and where those who disappear are not lost, only taken elsewhere. And if you ever hear humming in the woods, soft and low and terribly sweet, stop, listen, and remember what waits beneath the earth. Because sometimes the past doesn't let you go. Sometimes it calls you home.